Hi, and welcome to Newsmakers for inside analysis and behind-the-scenes commentary from Santa Barbara's top journalists and local political leaders about the most important news events in our community. Tonight, we look behind these headlines. Mayor Cathy Murillo hatches a plan to heal divisions on the city council, and it's apparently not going to work. A surprisingly crowded field of eager candidates seeks 2 seats on the school board. And as a longtime community hero passes, a look at how he changed Santa Barbara's landscape forever. And later, a roundup of other big stories, from Me Too meltdown at City College to growing woes in the Santa Barbara's affordable housing program. Our panel tonight, political reporter Josh Molina, school board member Laura Capps, and Nick Welsh, executive editor of The Independent. Thank you all for coming. So Josh, the mayor, city administrator Paul Casey, and vice mayor Randy Rouse sprung this surprise at the council meeting with a plan for a council retreat in Goleta, aimed at restoring harmony to what's been a bitterly divided group. What's behind this?
Well, the council typically has retreats. It's not unusual, and they set this one up to take place to talk about how to represent people in the district as well as the city at large. They also want to talk about some of the procedures, Rosenberg's rules of order, and have kind of an all-day thing where they roll up the sleeves and dig down, and no cameras, no recording.
No public.
Going to be fewer people. And so
9 a.m. on a Saturday at the airport. The place will be packed. I'm sure.
Exactly.
The public is invited.
Yeah.
You've been in government too long.
I know.
You can't watch it on
a good
TV.
year and a half.
But Jason Dominguez felt this, even though this is
So Jason says, "Oh, this is outrageous."
because it wasn't on the agenda, right? Isn't that what? Or it wasn't open for discussion. Is that his beef?
No, he tried to sneak it in just to make Cathy Murillo uncomfortable. But if I could finish my thought here, Jerry, Jason is upset because it's in Goleta. There's no cameras. It's not going to be recorded. He would like substantial conversation like this to take place in the council chamber. And he's not going to go. He's got another conflict. He's got a nonprofit. He's doing some training of some youth that he does some leadership training with. So he's not going to be there. But he's saying, why is the council doing this? They should know already how to do their jobs. And the city sort of says, oh, like all corporations, organizations, they have these retreats where they go and do this sort of thing. So he's making a big deal about it. But what's most interesting...
But isn't it really about him? I mean, isn't that where, not personalizing it, but the dysfunction is between him and Cathy, right?
Yeah, this is really not about a retreat. This is really about him using it as another wedge issue for him to look different than Cathy Murillo. It's pretty clear, he won't say it, that Jason's going to run for mayor, and he has to distinguish himself from Cathy in every way he can. And he's trying to paint her as being not as knowledgeable, as being secretive, as wanting to do things behind
How much are
closed
they
doors.
paying the facilitator?
$12,500 to come in and help them.
And
I don't think that's enough, given.
Well, how long is it going to go on?
All day. It's like 9 to 3 o'clock.
That isn't much. But just quickly though, don't you agree with me
Yeah.
that the fact that the facilitator that was selected by Paul Casey et al. Is the same person who just did the personnel review of Paul Casey, which just doesn't pass the smell test somehow.
Yeah, I think you're looking for trouble where there's other places.
It's television, babe.
I think the real subtext here is that Jason is a contrarian's contrarian. He likes to give people the third degree. Why ask one question when you can ask 20? And he's obviously really smart, and he's often the odd man out for no apparent purpose. And it's not just the context with Cathy. I think other council members bristle at sort of his theatrics and how he thinks the council should do it. Now, what he says is, I have to ask all these questions because that's how I represent the people in my district, and that's how I make everybody accountable. And so So I ask all of these questions, and it goes on and on and on. And if you're covering the council, you can get overtime because of Jason.
Well, that's a good thing. Does the school board have retreats?
Actually, we have one this weekend.
Really?
Yeah,
At the
and
airport?
At the
not
airport, you're going to
airport.
share the room?
Not at the airport, but I'm pro retreat. I think that the
Where's your retreat?
Brown Act of, I don't know exactly how to tell you. It's not secretive. We'll announce it. But I think the Brown Act, it makes it very challenging to spend a lot of time with one another. So this is, agendized and all that, but I find that there's a hindrance that you actually, as a body of 5 people, you can't actually get, or in the school board case, 5 people, you can't actually get together very much to talk about much.
So you can meet with one colleague, but not 2, because that would be a majority.
Exactly. So ours is Louise Lowry Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Randy
time is
Rouse...
It's at 9 a.m. All are welcome.
The fact that Randy, who is a very moderate, middle-of-the-road, quasi-Republican, even though he's not, and Kathy both want this on the agenda, I mean, suggests it's not a huge sort of conspiratorial item. I just think that it was really, the subtext was, how do we work better with Jason? And Jason doesn't want to
go,
better.
so it's
He
not
doesn't
gonna-
want to go. So it's probably not going to be that fruitful.
But there's a
Have you covered council retreats before? Have there been examples?
They're really boring. I have covered them.
Have you?
They are so insider that it's hard to pull sort of a thread
Yeah.
to write a story about it. It's sort of interesting if you know the players in the room, but they go 3 hours, they have lunch, they come back. It's a long day. So I have covered
Is the
them.
public invited to the lunch?
Yeah, they have food for
Oh.
everybody who shows up. But
Free food.
Jason is kind of smart here because he's trying to figure out ways where he can say I'm different from Kathy. And there are a group of people who are fired up saying, why can't you do it here? Now,
Dare I ask, has Anne Marie got one of them
she did speak at the council meeting. And
against this?
her quote was, "What are you trying to hide?" Yes, she said that. But
Good headline.
so he speaks for a group of people who
Don't like Kathy.
Well, no, I mean, it is a city, they are elected, they're council leaders. It's not an organization, it's not a business. They are supposed to be representing the public, and I think what happens with a lot of elected officials, they get totally indoctrinated into the city institution, and they sort of see themselves as city employees.
point.
And as opposed to the outsider. And Jason is portraying himself as the total outsider. The problem with that, though, is to get anything done, you need to work with people and you need to have city staff on your side. So it's a fine line. Is he being too much of a curmudgeon over here to the point where he's just going to be marginalized, or is he striking the line between serving his constituents and also being sort of a healthy skeptic? I would say right now he's definitely on an island by himself, but it may not matter when he runs. He'll probably get reelected.
Well,
Whether he's going to beat Kathy or not, he knows he's got to shake it up. He's got to make something happen, and he's trying
it's-
everything he can.
one thing for sure, the future lies ahead. I think I read that in a speech you wrote sometime. So, all right, really quickly, then, just to close on the retreat. So, when you go to the retreat with just your colleagues, is the sensibility of the conversation different than it is when you're having a regular public meeting and there are actually people? It's like, oh God, we can relax now and really tell the truth.
No, it's more that we cover things like protocols and board, like working together and what kind of things are we trying to achieve, and it's a little less, it's not, I mean, it's all very much, no one's showed up, they're very much welcome to, but it's sort of stepping back. I mean, we spend a lot of time together, and these are really important jobs. I mean, I can be sort of Pollyanna about it. I mean, to spend these are part-time gigs, and to spend a lot of time and try to get it right and make sure the relationships are good and that you're functioning well as a board is really important. Most companies have retreats, most organizations have retreats where you sort of have time to step back and evaluate how things are working.
All right. So moving on, will you talk about the election for school board in your retreat, in the school board retreat? Last time, 2016, 3 candidates, 3 openings. You didn't have to run. You were, coronated among 2 of your colleagues. But now there's 2 seats and 8 people running. What changed?
I think it's a new time in politics. I'm excited that 8 people are running for these 2 spots. I think it's great. I think there's really well-qualified candidates, and I love the excitement and the focus. And we should be having these kind of debates. All 3 of us that were running last time when there was only 3 spots, I can speak for myself. I wished that there was a campaign. I think campaigns help you become better elected officials should that happen. So I think it's great that 8 people are stepping forward to
But what do
a
you
tough
think
job.
happened to change that? I mean,
Was
that
it
is a
was
big-
it the San was it the Ed Barron's thing?
I'm sure that we have more focus and more attention. It could have gone the other way, like who wants that job? I sort of expected that might be the case. But I also think that the national landscape, more people are running by far for every single race
Right.
around the country. There's 5,000 some elected races across the country. More women are running, more teachers are running. In Arizona, 30 teachers are running now for state elected office for the first time. So I think more people are paying attention, and the school board is a great place to get involved.
How many? Now you've endorsed Mark Alvarado.
I have.
And
My colleague Ishmael.
Ismail. So how many of the 8 came to seek your endorsement?
4. 4 did. Yep. I met with 4 of them. And I'm excited. I'm excited about Mark. I'm excited about Ish, but I'm also excited about some other ones that are running as well.
Well, as a political matter, what's interesting is that you chose one candidate from the Save Our Schools San Marcos faction and one from the Democratic Party endorsed faction, which are basically the 2 slates. You have Ismail
Yeah.
and Rose Munoz on one side, and then you have Alvarado and Kate Ford on the other, and then 4 other people are running as wild cards. So
Well, I chose Mark.
was that a calculation?
Not at all. The
Not
opposite.
at all. Nah.
I chose Mark because, I worked with Mark closely for 5 years. My family's known Mark. When I came back to town 5 years ago, I was working on childhood hunger. I still am, and Mark was my partner working on that. And he knows everybody and really kind of helped me get reacquainted with the community. He knows.
What would he bring to the school board, did you feel?
He has a strong voice. I really appreciate his voice. I appreciate that he speaks out. I think that's what we need. I might not always agree with him, but he really cares too, and his passion and his commitment is evident.
All right, that's enough.
But you asked me.
Wait,
You asked
but-
me. Yeah.
No, I know. I foolishly walked into that one.
Yeah.
So when we had all the candidates on the show, 2 of the more conservative, Jill Rivera and Bonnie Raisin, brought up this dispute over just communities.
Yes.
What is just communities, and why is it controversial?
Yeah, Just Communities is a community group that the district partners with to deal with implicit bias, which is something that the state recommends, and it's state funding to help mostly teachers deal with implicit bias, racial bias in the workplace, but also some curriculum devoted to students. And so every year we look at their contract. They've been contracted with the district since 2012. And this year there's a lot of controversy around
Is
it.
it a year-by-year contract?
It is a year by year. And the school board last meeting, 2 meetings ago, we had some questions about the contract that were more procedural, sort of wanting to have evaluation measures, wanting to know scope and this kind of thing. But in the interim, in that time, this unnamed parent group came forward with and threatened a lawsuit, saying that this curriculum was actually racist itself. So
They brought in an attorney general candidate.
they did.
I mean, say
A
why.
failed
A
attorney.
failed is okay, but
Badly
still,
failed.
he does not live here. So he came from where? Orange County? Where does he live?
From Los Angeles somewhere, I
And
believe.
so he
yeah.
came in to say, throw down the gauntlet and say, we're going to sue you if you make good on this contract.
Do you
Yes.
think he's connected to the Pacific Legal Foundation, the Federalist Society of
I
California?
have no idea. I have no idea. But the materials that he was handing out, this curriculum, this so-called curriculum from Just Communities, we've now since learned that it has been doctored, and things were added in there to make it more controversial. Statements like white people and targeting Christians and things like that. So,
So the idea that the training would be blaming white people and Christians for
yes.
the discrimination
Yes.
and bias.
yes,
Wow.
and according to, we heard from over 25 teachers mostly and students and parents last board meeting, Josh was there, who were speaking out in favor of Just Communities, saying this is the opposite of what this curriculum.
This was this week's board
Yes,
meeting they were speaking
that
about?
this is the opposite of what Just Communities is trying to do. It's trying to eradicate some of these biases and racism and things like that, which I think is an important thing to do. So the board, or I should speak for myself, we had some questions about the contract, but not
You
questions.
had 4 questions.
I probably had, yeah, I probably
You
did have
did.
4.
You
Oh,
stated
thanks for
they were
listening.
4, yeah.
4, but not about the motive of trying to, I mean, we have a huge achievement gap, right? We still have,
So is the contract now approved or not approved?
next meeting, we will be taking it up.
So how do you, I mean, the political shorthand is that, Save Our Schools out in San Marcos is sort of a white flight, save the 1% programs. How do you not tie?
Whose political shorthand is that?
That's mine. That's yours, Jerry.
That's
Come
not
on.
mine.
I don't think that Mark Alvarado would agree with that assessment, but
Yeah.
Anyway, finish your
So,
thought.
I mean,
Such as
how
it
do
is.
you see this particular wild card being thrown down, folding
That's a
into
good
what's
question.
going on
That's a very good question.
at San Marcos? How does that work?
I've heard from some folks who are part of this Save Our Schools group that this is not related, that this lawsuit, these families who are behind this lawsuit, they're not part of
Do we
that
know
effort.
who's behind the? Well, it's not a lawsuit yet, right?
It's not a
threatened
lawsuit yet.
But
Right.
So, but do we know who the families are, or who the people are, or is it just this guy?
Yeah, it's just this person with anonymous letters, yeah.
This is going to give a bump to Bonnie Raisin and Jill Rivera because
Well, they were the ones that brought it up.
it's going to galvanize the conservative base, and they're going to get more votes
I
because
think-
of it. But I don't think it's, and it's going to be hot for a little while, but eventually it's going to go away, and it's going to come down to the Save Our Schools and
I think it's going to
the
hurt Mark
Democratic Party.
Alvarado and
Kate Ford?
Kate Ford, because the Democrats are going to use this as a talking point to say, look at these guys, they're associated with this, and how can any self-respecting Democrat or moderate go that way?
Interesting. So because the school board is the best, most interesting political campaign, I noticed that you have now Bigfooted your way into the covering the school
He
board.
was there, I think 4 hours you were there.
What were,
I was so
your
impressed.
impressions?
And I moved my chair too.
What
you know,
were
I
your
was
I know,
mobile.
impressions?
I know.
I cover city council.
Yeah.
School board is arguably way more important than the city council because we're talking about thousands
Children.
of families and children, and the stuff that happens there affects people's kids. School board meetings are not as smooth as a council meeting. There's a lot that goes on, and I hate that room. That room is so small.
Oh, it's awful.
And it's the councils, you can get comfortable there, and so. But the school board meeting, what we had, it was very emotional. It was very touching. There was a I think she was a high school student who talked about how she was empowered by going to this training. Now she feels like she has wings and she can fly because for so long she sort of felt like she was less than. And then we have teachers. You have to talk about white female teachers and male teachers. I was struck by the females who spoke, who said, I'm a liberal Democrat and I thought I had no bias, and then I took this training and there's a million things that I didn't realize that happened without me knowing it that was discriminatory. And so hearing them open up, this isn't some buddy on the board talking and saying, this needs to be done. These are people who are admitting that their view of how they teach changed because of it. And I don't know what the training is, I think it's probably really eye-opening, but I think everybody who works with kids should do this training because even if you disagree, even if you don't think you have any kind of bias, what's the harm? What's the harm in sort of trying to understand everybody that you're interacting with?
I say Josh for school board.
I
Write
know,
him
I
in.
think Josh is gonna run.
I'm trying to be more likable these
I
days.
love it that
How's that working out for you?
this show is becoming SB School Board
Oh, man.
Newsmakers.
Well, that's okay. That's the most interesting thing that's going on. Except for the city college races that these guys ignore.
They don't ignore it, they just copy other publications.
All right, so Bud Bottoms, the pioneering environmentalist and artist, died this week, and he's, of course, best known for the iconic dolphin sculptures at the wharf, but he did a lot more. You've been around forever. He was around forever. What impact did he have?
Bud was just, Bud had an amazing public life. He died this past week at 90. He was the son of a barber from LA. He moved to Santa Barbara in 1948. He was an illustrator, first for an advertising agency and then for, GE Tempo, which was a big think tank. And he was sort of an everyman at sort of the golden age of Santa Barbara's middle class, when there was actually a middle class here in Santa Barbara, and the economy was as amenable as it's ever been to middle class people in Santa Barbara. And he took the opportunity of public life and mixed it up in a really singular way. And so he started off and he came to the surface in the oil spill of 1969. And he was in his 40s at this time. And he famously came up with the slogan, "Get Oil Out," and the name of the organization, GOO.
Which is still around.
Which is still around. And he was sort of like the sort of, not to call a father figure, that may overstate it, but he took a lot of younger environmentalists who were then in town getting their chops under his wings, got them literally took them up in airplanes and said, "Hey, check out that oil spill." And like Paul Rellis, who then went on to start Community Environmental Council. He says, he really took me under my wings. Mark McGinnis, who helped start EDC, Mark said, "Hey, I was a 26-year-old punk kid at the time. I didn't know anything about Santa Barbara." And Bud Bottoms, he was very eloquent. He was like, the thing about him was the mirth and the lightness that he conveyed. And people in sort of cause politics tend to be grim, or they have a tendency to fall that way. Everything becomes very... And Bud had a lightness of spirit, which made him very easy to be around.
Was he connected to your father and Walter Capps and?
My parents sure knew him and revered him, as we all did. But in the environmental community, he was central to it, as Nick's explaining.
And he was a sort of cartoonist without portfolio. So he was an illustrator. And he was not like a big ideologue, but he would do these political cartoons, kind of like Mad Magazine, of Santa Barbara being despoiled by oil, or Santa Barbara being despoiled by, overdevelopment. And they were fun, and they were busy, and they were rambunctious, and they were over the top. And he brought a spirit of fun to the crusade.
All right.
Then we're not done yet. So
we're getting pretty close.
that's okay. So he
Wrap it up.
focused his energy at Stearns Wharf. And because at that time, Stearns Wharf was where the oil companies were doing business. They were operating. And there was a big push in response to the oil spill to get oil companies and operations off Stearns Wharf. They did. 10 years later, he's back with the frickin' dolphin fountain, which all of the city taste police said, "Oh my God, this is so tacky. Are you kidding me? We're not going to really have a dolphin fountain." That's like a hotel lobby.
It's great.
And from Pompano, Florida. No, we do not do that. And Bud, sort of Mr. Everyman populist, cleaned their clock.
All right. Well, you did you gave him a nice send-off in the paper, too. So, very nice work. Real quick, so we had this running battle over sexual harassment charges at City College, which was complicated. But in the end, the president, Anthony Beebe, issues a public apology, basically, to the women who were on there. Given what we're watching on the Supreme Court, and was that mishandled, do you think, from afar? Is that your view?
I don't know the ins and outs of all that happened there. It's pretty complicated to sort of track, but I think him speaking out and giving an apology is probably always a good thing to do.
There were all these Title IX complaints.
He gave an apology after settling
damage
for
was done,
$120,000
Yeah.
to Mark McIntyre, who was the offending party, whose contract wasn't renewed. So it was very much a mixed deal. McIntyre is one of these guys who goes up to the line and then crosses the line.
Right.
He's sort of our Kavanaugh, and in a lot of ways, he speaks in this very misogynistic code, but doesn't quite go over the line. And so he brought this guy in to speak, who had a number of sexual harassment allegations, date rape allegations, I think.
And then there started this flame war on the email chain and
right. And I think where the university or the administration blew it is that when people complained that they were, being subjected to hostile, commentary or abuse, they just said there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do. Yeah, and then the payoff, which Larry Gaskin, the former president, denounced as a terrible day. And then there's some issues with the AUD, and you wrote about that. You've written a lot about that. What are we getting all of the affordable housing we need now? The program's running as smooth as could be.
Well, the Mark, the first the first AUD development to get built, of course, is now on the market for sale, and
Which means rents will go up.
Yeah, and it's already expensive, $3,500 for a 2-bedroom. It's hard to judge the program based off of that one project. And
But you've been covering other things that are
so there,
being approved.
there's a contingent of Hispanic families and the representatives who've been showing up at City Council talking about how they are being increasingly evicted and displaced because people are buying houses that they've been renting in and raising the rents, or in some cases proposing AUD developments there. So that's one of the issues that comes to mind. On one hand, small apartments are cool, they're affordable by design, we can house a lot of people who are young in the workforce, but they're still expensive. It's still Santa Barbara. There are no rent caps for AUD,
Right.
and so that's the problem. And then if you take some house on the east side where a couple families are living in, and they're cobbling to get multiple paychecks to pay the rent, and then you tell them go. I don't know if that's helpful to affordable housing.
real quickly. You wrote a column.
Yeah, I mean,
leading with
what's up
Deborah
on-
Schwartz,
what's on
the
the
Planning
table?
Commission.
What's on the table that might be interesting is what they call an exclusionary requirement that says if you're going to get the bonus density and all the breaks that go with an AUD, you have to set aside 10 to 15% of the units for people who are in the 80 to 120% median income, which is, the top of that line would be somewhere about $70,000 for a household. So right now, with the Mark, what we just found out with the prospectus that they're showing is that 50% of their tenants make $150,000 a year or more. And what the AUD program is targeting is people who make a max of like 125. So it's clearly the people who are renting there are not the people that the
Right.
program is designed to help.
Right. And parenthetically, Proposition 10, which would enable rent control throughout California, is losing badly and is going to go down. So that's,
But we haven't weighed in yet with our endorsement. That's going to change everything.
well, that's true. I didn't think about it.
That's going to change. That's going to move the needle. Jerry.
Really helped Hal Conklin. Yeah.
It's done. It's done. All
We just
right.
think how bad he would have done if we hadn't endorsed it.
Yeah, all right. Mayor Conklin. All right. Well, and you endorsed him too. Another great.
Yeah.
Wow, what a
why
powerhouse
we're on-
panel.
that's why we're on the show,
panel we've
Jerry.
got here tonight. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks to
Moving the
tonight's
needle.
panel. Josh, Molina, Laura Capps, and Nick Welsh. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to visit our website, Newsmakers with JR, where you can check out my blogs on politics and media in Santa Barbara and beyond. Thanks to our director, JP Montalvo, to our crew, Mark, Courtney, and Elliot, and as always, our high-powered, senior, high-ranking executive producer, Hap Freund. Thanks a lot. We'll see you later.